"Stop this wedding. That woman is a liar and a cheat." The words echoed through the elegant reception hall at the Eco Hotel in Lagos, cutting through the joyful Afrobeat music like a machete through silk. Every head turned toward the entrance where 15-year-old Kemi Adebayo stood, her school uniform wrinkled, her face streaked with tears and rage. In her trembling hands, she clutched a smartphone displaying a video that would destroy everything. What would you do if you walked in on this? Hit like if you've been betrayed, and comment below where you're watching from. Her father, Tunde Adebayo, froze at the altar in his pristine white agbada, his new bride Folake Okafor beside him in her stunning gold and burgundy geli. 300 wedding guests, Lagos's elite, business moguls, politicians, and socialites, sat in stunned silence. The pastor's Bible trembled in his hands. "Kemi, what are you doing here?" Tunde's voice cracked with embarrassment and confusion. His daughter was supposed to be at boarding school in Ibadan, not crashing his wedding to his business partner's daughter. "Security, please escort." "No, Dad. You need to see this before you marry her." Kemi rushed forward, dodging the approaching security guards. "Folake has been lying to you. She's been cheating with your business partner, Uncle Bayo. I have proof." The bride's face went pale beneath her elaborate makeup. Her father, Chief Bayo Okafor, half rose from his seat in the front row, his expensive kaftan rustling. Tunde's construction company had merged with Okafor Industries just 6 months ago, and this marriage was supposed to seal their business partnership. "This is ridiculous," Folake whispered, but her voice shook. "Tunde, don't listen to this child. She's always been jealous of our relationship." Kemi held up her phone higher. "I recorded everything yesterday when I came home early from school. I saw you two in Dad's bedroom, kissing and doing things. You said you were only marrying Dad for his money and that you'd divorce him after a year." The wedding guests erupted in shocked murmurs. Someone's wine glass shattered against the marble floor. Chief Okafor's wife began fanning herself frantically with her program. The society photographer's camera clicked rapidly, capturing every moment of the domestic betrayal unfolding. Tunde stared at his daughter, then at his bride. "Folake, is this true?" Before Folake could answer, Kemi pressed play on her phone. Even from across the room, the audio was clear enough for everyone to hear Folake's voice. "Oh, Bayo, I can't wait to get Tunde's signature on those business documents tomorrow. Once I'm his wife, we'll have access to everything. His construction contracts, his properties, his bank accounts." The room exploded. Women gasped. Men shouted. Someone screamed. Tunde ripped off his wedding ring and hurled it across the room. The emotional manipulation and financial scheming laid bare for all of Lagos high society to witness. But as chaos erupted around them, Folake's shocked expression slowly transformed into something cold and calculating. She leaned close to Tunde's ear and whispered something that made his face drain of all color. "You think you've won, little girl?" Folake called out to Kemi over the noise, her sweet facade completely dropped. "You have no idea what you've just started." The lights suddenly cut out, plunging the reception hall into darkness. In the confusion of screaming guests and overturning chairs, Kemi heard her father's voice, panicked and desperate. "Kemi, run. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this." What do you think happens next? Comment below. 2 hours earlier, Kemi had been sitting in her dormitory at St. Monica's Girls' College in Ibadan, staring at the video on her phone with trembling hands. Her roommate Adunni sat beside her on the narrow bed, equally shocked. "Kemi, you have to show your father," Adunni whispered, glancing around to make sure their other roommates weren't listening. "That woman is planning to destroy your family." Kemi's mind raced back to yesterday afternoon when she'd taken the 3-hour bus ride home to Lagos, hoping to surprise her father before his wedding. She'd used her key to enter their family home in Victoria Island, the same house where she'd grown up with both parents before her mother died of cancer 2 years ago. She'd heard voices from upstairs, her father's bedroom that he'd shared with her beloved mother, Yemisi. Thinking Folake might be there helping with wedding preparations, Kemi had climbed the marble staircase quietly, not wanting to interrupt. What she'd discovered through the slightly open bedroom door had shattered her world. Folake and Chief Bayo Okafor, her father's business partner and supposed best friend, were wrapped in an intimate embrace on her parents' bed. The same bed where her mother had spent her final days. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound. "Once I marry him tomorrow, we'll have everything," Folake had said, adjusting her wrapper. "Tund is so blinded by grief and loneliness, he'll sign anything I put in front of him. The construction company, the properties, the offshore accounts, it'll all be ours within 6 months. And then," Bayo's voice was hungry, greedy, "then we eliminate him. A tragic accident at one of his construction sites. These things happen all the time in Lagos. Poor widowed Folake inherits everything, and we disappear to London with our fortune." Kemi's hands had shaken so violently she'd almost dropped her phone, but she'd managed to record nearly 10 minutes of their conversation, including their detailed plans to embezzle from Adebayo Construction and frame Tund for tax evasion if he became suspicious. Now, back in her dormitory, the weight of what she'd learned pressed down on her like concrete blocks. Her father wasn't just facing infidelity in marriage, he was walking into a death trap. "The wedding starts at 4, Kemi said, checking her watch. "If I leave now and catch the express bus, I can make it." "What if they don't believe you?" Adani asked. "Adults never listen to us." "Then I'll make them listen." Kemi grabbed her school bag and stuffed her phone charger inside. "My father loved my mother more than life itself. He deserves to know the truth about this cheating spouse before he destroys his life." The two girls embraced quickly. Kemi slipped out of the dormitory during afternoon study period, knowing she'd face suspension if caught. But her father's life was worth more than her perfect attendance record. The bus ride to Lagos felt eternal. Every bump in the road, every stop to pick up passengers, every minute that ticked by brought her father closer to signing his life away to a woman who planned to murder him. As the bus pulled into Lagos's chaotic traffic, Kemi's phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Stay away from the wedding, little girl. Some secrets are worth killing for." Her blood ran cold. They knew she'd been there. They knew she'd heard everything. But it was too late to turn back now. The bus was already weaving through the crowded streets of Lagos Island, past the vendors selling plantains and pure water, past the Danfo buses belching black smoke, toward the Eco Hotel where her father was about to marry his executioner. Hit subscribe if you're on the edge of your seat. What would you do in Kemi's situation? Comment below. The darkness in the reception hall lasted only seconds, but it felt like an eternity. When the emergency lights flickered on, casting eerie shadows across the elegant venue, Kemi found herself pressed against a marble pillar, her heart pounding like traditional drums. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain calm," the hotel manager's voice boomed over the microphone. "We're experiencing a temporary power outage. Normal lighting will be restored momentarily." But Kemi knew this was no accident. In the dim light, she could see Folake whispering urgently to 3 men in dark suits, men who definitely weren't part of the wedding party. Chief Bayo had disappeared entirely. "Kemi!" Her father's voice cut through the confused chatter. Tund pushed through the crowd of bewildered guests, his white igbata now wrinkled and stained with spilled palm wine. "Where are you? We need to leave. Now." She stepped out from behind the pillar. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I had to tell you. I couldn't let you marry her." Tund reached her and pulled her into a fierce embrace. Up close, she could see the devastation in his eyes, the betrayal, the humiliation, the shattered trust. This public disgrace would be talked about in Lagos society for years. "You saved my life, little one," he whispered in Yoruba. "But we're in danger now. That message you showed me from Folake, they're not just after money anymore." Before Kemi could ask what he meant, the main lights suddenly blazed back to life. The wedding guests blinked in the harsh illumination, and Kemi saw that the hall had transformed into something far more sinister. Chief Bayo Okafor stood near the exit doors with 4 armed security guards, not hotel security, but private muscle. Folake had changed out of her wedding gown and now wore a simple black dress, as if she'd been expecting this turn of events. "Tund Adebayo," Chief Bayo's voice carried across the room. "You and your daughter need to come with us. We have some business to discuss." Several guests began moving toward the exits, but the armed men blocked their path. Someone screamed. A woman fainted. The society photographer tried to hide behind his camera equipment. "You see, old friend," Bayo continued, his voice taking on a menacing tone, "your daughter has caused us considerable embarrassment today. More importantly, she's interfered with a very lucrative business arrangement." Tund stepped protectively in front of Kemi. "Let these people go, Bayo. Your business is with me. Actually, it's with both of you now." Folake's voice was ice-cold as she approached them. "Your precious daughter recorded more than just our conversation yesterday. She also captured some very sensitive documents on my desk, documents that could land all of us in prison if they reached the wrong people." Kemi's mind raced. She remembered seeing official-looking papers scattered across the bedside table while she was recording, but she hadn't paid attention to them. Her phone had been focused on Folake and Bayo's faces. "What documents?" Tund demanded. "The real contracts for the Victoria Island Development Project," Bayo said with a cruel smile. "The ones showing how we've been inflating construction costs and skimming millions from the government. Your signature is on every single fraudulent invoice, Tund. If those documents surface, you'll be the one going to prison, not us." The realization hit Tund like a physical blow. The co-parenting conflict with his ex-wife over custody had left him desperate to prove his stability. The construction contracts with the Lagos state government had been his ticket to financial security and respectability. But he'd been signing papers without reading them carefully, trusting his business partner completely. "You've been setting me up this entire time," he breathed. "For 2 years," Folake confirmed. "Ever since your wife died and you became vulnerable. Grief makes men so pliable." Among the terrified wedding guests, Kemi noticed several people she recognized: government officials, bank managers, construction industry executives. They weren't just witnesses to a wedding scandal anymore. They were witnesses to a massive corruption scheme. "Here's what's going to happen," Bayo announced. "You're going to transfer 60% of Adebayo Construction to Folake as her wedding settlement. Then you're going to sign a confession taking full responsibility for the fraudulent contracts. In exchange, we'll let you and your daughter disappear quietly. Run to America, start over." "And if we refuse?" Tund asked, though his voice suggested he already knew the answer. Folake smiled, and for the first time, Kemi saw pure evil in another human being's face. "Then we'll release security footage of you entering the government ministry at night to plant fake documents. Amazing what digital technology can create these days. You'll spend the rest of your life in Kirikiri Maximum Prison, and your daughter will be sent to a very special boarding school where children learn to be obedient." But as Folake spoke, Kemi felt her phone buzzing in her pocket. A notification. Someone was calling her. She glanced at the screen and her heart stopped. The caller ID showed her mother's name, Mama Yemisi. But her mother had been dead for 2 years. What do you think that phone call means? Comment your thoughts on this crazy betrayal. Don't forget to subscribe for more shocking stories. "Answer it," Tund whispered urgently to Kemi. "Now." With shaking fingers, Kemi accepted the call and put it on speaker. The voice that filled the reception hall made everyone freeze. "Hello, my darling daughter." It was her mother's voice. Unmistakably, impossibly, her mother's voice. Several wedding guests crossed themselves. Chief Bayo's face went white as chalk. "Mama?" Kemi's voice broke. But you're dead?" "Yes, officially I am. But sometimes, when the people we love are in terrible danger, we find ways to reach out from beyond." The voice was warm, loving, exactly as Kemi remembered. "I've been watching over you both, and I'm very proud of you for being so brave today." Folake lunged forward, trying to grab the phone. "This is some kind of trick. Some recording." "Is it Folake?" The voice turned cold as Lagos harmattan wind. "Then how do I know about the scar on your left shoulder from when you fell off your bicycle at age 7? How do I know you're wearing my wedding earrings right now, the ones you stole from my jewelry box the day after my funeral?" Folake's hand flew instinctively to her ear, where indeed hung a pair of diamond earrings that had belonged to Yemisi Adebayo. "Or perhaps you'd like me to tell everyone here about the real reason you befriended my husband?" the voice continued. "About how you killed me?" The reception hall erupted in gasps and screams. Tund staggered backward as if he'd been shot. Yemisi died of cancer, he protested. I watched her waste away in the hospital for months. Cancer that was helped along by small doses of rat poison in my medications, the voice replied calmly. Folake volunteered to pick up my prescriptions from the pharmacy, remember? So helpful, so caring. She wanted to make sure I suffered slowly, so no one would suspect murder. Folake's composure cracked completely. You can't prove that. Even if you were somehow alive, you can't prove anything. Actually, I can. The voice took on a triumphant tone. I left something for you, Kemi. In the old mango tree behind our house, the one where I used to read you bedtime stories. Climb up to the hollow in the trunk. You'll find a small metal box with evidence that will put both Folake and Bayo in prison for the rest of their lives. Chief Bayo made a desperate gesture to his armed men, but before they could move, the hotel's main doors burst open. Lagos State Police officers flooded into the reception hall, led by a stern-faced woman in inspector's uniform. Nobody move. This is Inspector Aginola of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. In the chaos that followed, Kemi heard her mother's voice one last time, soft and private, meant only for her. I love you, my precious daughter. Take care of your father. And remember, the truth always finds a way. The line went dead. As the police began arresting Folake and Bayo, and terrified wedding guests gave statements, Kemi looked at her phone's call log. There was no record of any incoming call. No missed call. No connection to any number at all. But she knew what she had to do. Dad, she whispered urgently, we have to get to the house. We have to find that box. Tund nodded, still in shock from everything he'd learned. His wife hadn't just died, she'd been murdered. His business partner hadn't just betrayed him, he'd been planning to kill him too. And his daughter hadn't just saved his life, she'd somehow channeled her mother's spirit to save them both. But as they moved toward the exit, Inspector Aginola called out, Mr. Adebayo, you and your daughter will need to come to the station for questioning. There are serious allegations about fraudulent government contracts that need investigation. Kemi's heart sank. They were free from Folake and Bayo's immediate threat, but now they faced potential criminal charges. The corrupted construction documents were still out there, still bearing her father's forged signatures. Inspector, Tund said with quiet dignity, give us 24 hours. I believe my daughter has evidence that will clear my name and expose the real criminals. 12 hours, the inspector replied firmly. Report to my office tomorrow morning at 9, or I'll issue a warrant for your arrest. As they walked out of the Eco Hotel, past the gathering crowd of curious onlookers and news reporters, Kemi felt the weight of everything they still had to face. The evidence in the mango tree might save her father from prison, but it wouldn't erase the scandal. It wouldn't bring back the money stolen from government projects. It wouldn't heal the trauma of learning that her mother had been murdered. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a small voice wondered, if her mother's spirit could reach out once, could she do it again when they needed her most? The answer would come sooner than she expected. Like if you believe in supernatural justice. What do you think they'll find in that tree? Share your thoughts below. The Adebayo family compound in Victoria Island felt haunted as Kemi and her father walked through the front gate at sunset. The house where she'd grown up, where her mother had lived and died, where yesterday she discovered a betrayal so deep it had shattered her world, now stood silent and imposing against the orange Lagos sky. Tund moved like a man in a trance. Every few steps, he would stop and shake his head, as if trying to wake up from a nightmare. The weight of learning his wife had been murdered, combined with the public humiliation of his wedding disaster and the looming threat of criminal charges, had aged him 10 years in a single day. Dad, are you okay? Kemi asked as they stood before the towering mango tree in their backyard, the same tree where her mother used to hold her on lazy Sunday afternoons, reading fairy tales about brave princesses who saved their kingdoms. I keep thinking about the signs I missed, Tund whispered. Your mother's medication making her sicker instead of better. Folake always volunteering to help with hospital visits. The way Yemisi's condition would improve when Folake was traveling, then worsen when she returned. He clenched his fists. How could I have been so blind? Kemi placed her hand on his arm. Mama always said people see what they expect to see. You expected kindness, so you saw kindness. That's not a weakness, Dad. That's who you are. The mango tree's trunk was massive, its branches spreading like protective arms over their backyard. Kemi found the hollow her mother had mentioned, about 8 feet up, hidden behind thick leaves. She'd climbed this tree countless times as a child, but never this high. Be careful, Tund called as she pulled herself up, her school uniform snagging on the rough bark. Inside the hollow, her fingers touched cold metal. A small tin box, the kind that might have once held chocolates or biscuits. It was heavier than she expected, and when she shook it gently, she heard papers rustling inside. Back on the ground, they carried the box to the outdoor table where her family used to eat supper on warm evenings. Tund's hands trembled as he opened the latch. Inside were documents that made them both gasp. Bank statements showing regular transfers from Folktales' account to a chemical supply company. Photocopies of falsified medical records. Receipts for rat poison purchased under fake names. And most damning of all, a handwritten confession in Yemisi's own handwriting, dated just 2 weeks before her death. If anything happens to me, the letter began, know that it was not natural. I have discovered that folate okafor has been poisoning my medications. I have evidence, but I am too weak now to fight. I pray that someday, my family will find this truth and seek justice for my murder. Tund collapsed into the chair, tears streaming down his face. She knew. She knew, and she couldn't tell me because I wouldn't have believed her. I trusted Folake completely. But there was more in the box. Financial documents showing that Folake and Chief Bayo had been embezzling money from Adebayo Construction for over a year, using Tund's grief and distraction to cover their tracks. Forged signatures on government contracts. Evidence of bribes paid to ministry officials. Dad, this clears you completely, Kemi said, holding up the documents. These prove you had no knowledge of the fraud. You were being manipulated and used. But it also proves I was a fool, Tund replied bitterly. A fool who let criminals murder his wife and steal his business while he wallowed in grief and loneliness. As they sat in the growing darkness, reviewing each document, Kemi's phone suddenly rang again. Both of them froze, remembering the impossible call from earlier. The caller ID showed, Mama Yemisi. Answer it, Tund whispered. Please. This time, Yemisi's voice sounded weaker, more distant. My darling family, you found the evidence. But there's something else you need to know. The documents you have will save Tund from prison, but they won't stop Folake and Bayo permanently. What do you mean? Kemi asked. They have backup plans. Hidden bank accounts in Switzerland. False passports. Private jets ready to take them out of Nigeria tonight. If they escape, they'll disappear forever, and other families will suffer what we've suffered. Tund leaned closer to the phone. Yemisi, if you're really somehow speaking to us, I'm so sorry. I failed you. I failed to protect you. My beloved husband, you didn't fail anyone. You loved with an open heart, and that's never a failure. But now you must act with that same open heart to protect others. Take the evidence to Inspector Aginola tonight. Don't wait until morning. But the inspector said we have until 9 a.m., Kemi protested. By 9 a.m., Folake and Bayo will be on a plane to Geneva. They're moving their stolen money as we speak. You have maybe 3 hours before they disappear forever. The urgency in her mother's voice spurred them into action. But as they gathered the documents and prepared to leave for the police station, they heard cars pulling up outside their gate. Multiple vehicles. Doors slamming. Voices shouting orders. Through the front window, they saw Chief Bayo and several armed men surrounding their house. Too late, Yemisi's voice came through the phone one last time, filled with fear. They've come for the evidence. And this time, they're not planning to let you live. The lights in the house suddenly went out, and they heard footsteps on the front porch. Don't go anywhere. The next chapter will blow your mind. What do you think happens next? Hit that notification bell. Back door. Now. Tund grabbed the tin box and Kemi's hand, pulling her through their darkened house as the front door exploded inward. Search every room. Chief Bayo's voice echoed through the hallway. Find that box and find them. This ends tonight. Kemi's heart pounded as they crept through the kitchen toward the rear exit. But as Tund reached for the door handle, it swung open to reveal Folake standing there with a pistol pointed directly at his chest. "Going somewhere, my dear almost husband?" Folake had changed into black tactical gear, looking nothing like the elegant bride from earlier that day. "You've caused us quite enough trouble." Behind her stood two more armed men, cutting off any escape route. They were trapped between Folake's team and Bayo's men, who were now searching the house room by room, their flashlight beams cutting through the darkness. "What do you want?" Tund asked, trying to shield Kemi with his body. "The box, obviously, and the elimination of the only two people who can testify against us." Folake's voice was clinical, businesslike. "We should have killed you both months ago, but Bayo insisted on the subtle approach. Manipulation, gradual theft, slow poison. I always preferred more direct methods." "Like murdering my mother," Kemi said, her voice stronger than she felt. "Your mother was a romantic fool, just like your father. She actually thought love could conquer all." Folake laughed coldly. "Love doesn't conquer anything. Money does. Power does. Fear does." The armed men had finished searching the front of the house and were moving toward the kitchen. In moments, they would be surrounded completely. But then Kemi's phone rang again. This time, everyone in the room could hear Yemisi's voice clearly, speaking in Yoruba with an authority that made the hardened criminals step backward. "Folake Okafor, you dare enter my house with weapons? You dare threaten my family?" Folake's gun hand began to shake. "This is impossible. Dead people don't make phone calls." "Death is not the end for those who die protecting love," Yemisi's spirit replied. "And love is more powerful than your weapons, more enduring than your stolen money, more fearsome than your empty threats." The temperature in the kitchen dropped noticeably. Frost began forming on the windows despite the warm Lagos night. The armed men looked around nervously, their fingers tightening on their weapons. "Enough games." Chief Bayo burst into the kitchen, his own pistol drawn. "Kill them all now. We don't have time for this supernatural nonsense." But as he spoke, the lights throughout the house began flickering on and off in a rhythmic pattern. The refrigerator turned on with a loud hum. The kitchen taps began running by themselves. Every electronic device in the house activated simultaneously, creating a cacophony of beeps, rings, and mechanical sounds. "The house is haunted," one of the armed men whispered, backing toward the door. "We should leave." "Houses aren't haunted, you fool." Folake snapped, but her voice betrayed her growing fear. "It's some kind of electronic trick." Then they heard sirens. Multiple police vehicles approaching rapidly. "You called the police," Bayo accused Tund. "We didn't have time," Tund replied truthfully. "But someone did." Through the kitchen window, they could see the flashing lights of Lagos State Police cars pulling up outside. Inspector Aginola's voice boomed through a megaphone. "This is EFCC. Surround the building. No one enters or leaves." Folake spun toward Bayo. "You said we had until morning. You said they wouldn't act until we were gone." "I don't understand," Bayo stammered. "My contact at the station said." "Your contact betrayed you," Yemisi's voice interrupted through Kemi's phone. "Just like you betrayed everyone who ever trusted you. Justice finds a way, even from beyond the grave." The front door burst open again, this time admitting Inspector Aginola and a team of armed police officers. "Drop your weapons. Drop them now." In the chaos that followed, shouts, gunshots fired into the ceiling, tactical officers storming through the house. Kemi clutched the tin box to her chest and stayed close to her father. The evidence that would save him and destroy his enemies was finally in the right hands. But as the police handcuffed Folake and dragged her toward the front door, she managed to break free for one terrifying moment. She lunged toward Kemi with a knife that had appeared from somewhere in her tactical gear, screaming, "If I can't have the money, no one gets to live." Time slowed. Tund threw himself between the knife and his daughter. Inspector Aginola shouted orders. Police officers raised their weapons. And Yemisi's voice rang out one final time, not from the phone, but from everywhere at once. "You will not harm my child. What happens next will leave you speechless." Do you believe in supernatural protection? Comment below if you think love really is stronger than evil. Don't forget to subscribe for the incredible conclusion. The knife stopped inches from Tun's chest, as if frozen in midair. Folklate's face contorted with confusion and terror as an invisible force held her weapon motionless. Her eyes rolled back, showing only whites, and she began speaking in a voice that wasn't her own. I cannot move. The voice that came from Folklate's throat was thin and desperate. Something is holding me. Something powerful. Inspector Aginola and her officers stared in shock as Folklate's body went rigid, the knife still suspended impossibly in space. Then, as suddenly as it had stopped, the knife clattered to the floor, and Folklate collapsed unconscious. Medical team! Inspector Aginola shouted into her radio. We need paramedics at this location immediately. But Kemi wasn't watching the police activity. She was staring at her phone, where a final message had appeared in her mother's handwriting. My darling ones, I can rest now. Justice will be served. Take care of each other. Love never dies. The screen went dark, and this time, Kemi knew instinctively that her mother's spirit had moved on to whatever came after this life. Dad, she whispered, it's over. Tund wrapped his arms around his daughter, both of them shaking from exhaustion and trauma. Around them, the police were securing the scene, gathering evidence, and preparing to transport the criminals who had destroyed so many lives through their web of domestic betrayal and financial manipulation. Chief Bayo sat in handcuffs on their living room sofa, his expensive agbada torn and dirty, his face a mask of defeat. The armed men who had followed him were being loaded into police vans. The empire built on corruption and murder was crumbling in real time. Mr. Adebayo, Inspector Aginola approached them carefully. Are you both injured? Do you need medical attention? We're okay, Tund replied, though his voice was hoarse from the night's events. Inspector, I have evidence that will explain everything. Financial records, confession letters, proof of fraud and murder. He handed over the tin box with steady hands. My wife gathered this evidence before she died. She knew Folklate was poisoning her, but she was too weak to fight back. She hid this hoping someone would eventually find the truth. Inspector Aginola opened the box and examined the contents with increasing amazement. Mr. Adebayo, this evidence clears you completely of the construction fraud charges. More than that, it provides grounds for prosecuting multiple high-level government officials who took bribes. This is going to be a major corruption case. What about Folklate and Bayo? Kemi asked. Will they go to prison? Based on what I'm seeing here? Murder, embezzlement, fraud, conspiracy, attempted murder. They'll spend the rest of their lives behind bars. The inspector's expression was grim but satisfied. Justice has been a long time coming, but it's finally here. As the police finished their work and began leaving with their prisoners, Tund and Kemi found themselves alone in their house for the first time since the nightmare began. The place felt different now, not haunted, but peaceful, as if a long-held tension had finally been released. Dad, what happens now? Kemi asked as they sat together on the living room sofa where she used to do her homework while her mother cooked dinner. Now we heal, Tund said simply. The construction company will need to be rebuilt. Our reputation will need time to recover. But we have each other, and we have the truth. Will you ever marry again? Tund was quiet for a long moment. Someday, perhaps. But only when I meet someone who loves you as much as they love me. Someone who honors your mother's memory instead of trying to erase it. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun rise over Lagos through their front windows. The city was waking up, vendors setting up their stalls, buses beginning their routes, children heading to school. Life continued as it always did, even after the most dramatic betrayals and revelations. Kemi's phone buzzed with a text message, but this time it was from her roommate Adunni. Saw the news. Are you okay? Everyone at school is talking about your bravery. For the first time in days, Kemi smiled. She was famous now, not as the daughter of a criminal, but as the girl who exposed corruption and solved her mother's murder. The story would follow her for years, but it would be a story of courage, not shame. I need to go back to school soon, she said. Not yet, Tund replied. First, we're going to take a vacation. Maybe visit your grandmother in Abuja. Or travel somewhere your mother always wanted to see. We need time to be a family again. But even as they made plans for healing and recovery, neither of them noticed the black sedan parked across the street or the man inside talking urgently on his phone. The operation failed. Folake and Bayo are in custody. We need to activate the contingency plan immediately. The voice on the other end was cold and professional. Understood. Eliminate all remaining witnesses. Make it look like an accident. As the sedan drove away, Kemi felt a sudden chill despite the warm morning sun. Her mother's spirit might have moved on, but the enemies her family had made were still very much alive. And they weren't finished with the Adebayos yet. Subscribe now for the shocking continuation. What new threat do you think is coming for this family? Comment your predictions below. 3 weeks later, life had begun to feel normal again for the Adebayo family. Tund had returned to work, focusing on rebuilding his construction company's reputation with honest contracts and transparent business practices. Kemi was back at school, where she'd become something of a celebrity, the brave girl who solved her mother's murder and exposed a massive corruption ring. But normalcy was an illusion. The first sign of trouble came during Kemi's mathematics class at St. Monica's College. Sister Margaret was explaining quadratic equations when the principal, Mrs. Ogundimu, knocked on the classroom door with an urgent expression. Kemi Adebayo, please gather your belongings. Your father is here to collect you. But when Kemi reached the principal's office, the man waiting for her wasn't her father. He was a stranger in an expensive suit, tall and lean with cold eyes and a smile that didn't reach them. Hello, Kemi. My name is Mr. Adeyemi. I'm a family friend of your father's. He asked me to pick you up because he's been detained on urgent business. Something in his tone made her blood run cold. This was the same feeling she'd had when she first saw Folake and Chief Bayo together. The instinct that something was very, very wrong. I don't know you, Kemi said carefully. And my father would never send a stranger to collect me without calling first. Mrs. Ogundimu looked confused. But he showed proper identification and new details about your family situation. I thought. Where's my father? Kemi demanded, backing away from the stranger. What's happened to him? Mr. Adeyemi's fake smile faded. Your father is safe for now. But he won't remain so unless you come with me quietly. There are people who were very unhappy about what happened to Chief Bayo and his daughter. People who lost a great deal of money when their operation was exposed. The corruption ring hadn't ended with Folake and Bayo's arrest. There were bigger players, government ministers, international investors, criminal organizations, who had been using the construction company as a front for money laundering and embezzlement. Kemi's courage in exposing the truth had cost them millions of dollars. What do you want? Kemi asked, her voice steadier than she felt. Justice of a different kind, Mr. Adeyemi replied. Your father will remain unharmed as long as you cooperate. But if you try to run, if you call the police, if you make any trouble at all, he'll suffer a very unfortunate accident. Mrs. Ogundimu stepped forward protectively. Now see here, you can't just... The man pulled out his phone and showed them a video. Kemi's heart stopped. It was her father, tied to a chair in what looked like an abandoned warehouse, very much alive but clearly in danger. Kemi, don't listen to them, her father's voice came from the phone's speaker. Don't sacrifice yourself for me. Get help. Don't. The video cut off abruptly. As you can see, time is a factor, Mr. Adeyemi said calmly. Come with me now and your father lives. Refuse and he dies. It's quite simple. Kemi's mind raced through her options. She could scream, try to run, alert the school security. But they had her father. They had already proven they could reach into her safe spaces, her school, her family, whenever they chose. I need to call my father first, she said, to verify that he's okay. I'm afraid that's not possible. You see, your father's well-being depends entirely on your immediate cooperation. But as they spoke, Kemi's phone began buzzing in her pocket. A text message from an unknown number. Don't go with him. Police are on the way. Your father is safe. Trust me. A friend. Mr. Adeyemi noticed her phone's notification sound. Hand over your device. Now. Instead of complying, Kemi did something that surprised everyone in the room, including herself. She pressed the emergency button on her phone, a feature her father had insisted on installing after the wedding incident, and spoke clearly into the device. This is Kemi Adebayo at St. Monica's College in Ibadan. I'm being threatened by a man calling himself Mr. Adeyemi who claims to have kidnapped my father. Please send help immediately. The man lunged for her phone, but Mrs. Ogundimu stepped between them. Security, she shouted at the top of her lungs. Security to the principal's office immediately. In the confusion that followed, school security guards rushing in, students gathering in the hallways, Mrs. Ogundimu demanding explanations, Mr. Adeyemi made a fatal mistake. He pulled out a gun. Everyone stay calm, he said, but his composure was cracking. This doesn't have to be difficult. But the moment he drew the weapon, he'd escalated from kidnapping to armed assault on school grounds. The emergency response was immediate and overwhelming. Within minutes, the school was surrounded by police cars, and Inspector Aginola's voice was coming through the building's intercom system. This is the Lagos State Police. The building is surrounded. Release the hostages and surrender peacefully. As trained negotiators took over the situation, Kemi found herself thinking about her mother's words. The truth always finds a way. Even from beyond the grave, Yemisi Adebayo seemed to be protecting her family, ensuring that those who tried to harm them faced swift justice. But the immediate crisis raised a terrifying question. If this man was just a foot soldier in a larger criminal organization, how many other enemies were still out there? How far would they go to silence the girl who had cost them their fortune? The answer would come sooner than anyone expected, in a form that none of them saw coming. What do you think happens to her father? Is he really safe, or is this just the beginning of a bigger conspiracy? Hit that like button if you're invested in this family's survival. The standoff at St. Monica's College lasted 4 hours, but for Kemi, it felt like an eternity. She sat in the principal's office, surrounded by police negotiators, watching through the window as news vans and curious crowds gathered outside the school gates. Inspector Aginola paced the room, speaking urgently into her radio. Any word on the father's location? We need confirmation that Tunde Adebayo is safe before we can proceed with negotiations. Inspector, one of her officers called out, "We've got something." The emergency tracker on his phone shows he's at the construction site on Victoria Island, the government housing project. SWAT team is moving in now. Kemi's heart pounded as she listened to radio chatter about tactical approaches and suspect locations. Meanwhile, Mr. Adeyemi had barricaded himself in the school's library with 2 teachers as hostages, demanding safe passage out of Nigeria in exchange for information about her father's whereabouts. But something felt wrong about the entire situation. The kidnapping felt too convenient, too obvious. Her father was one of the most security-conscious people she knew after the wedding incident. How had strangers managed to grab him in broad daylight? "Inspector," Kemi said quietly, "I think this might be a diversion." "What do you mean?" "My father always carries 2 phones, his regular one and an emergency phone that only I know about. If he was really kidnapped, he would have found a way to contact me on the secret line." Inspector Aginola frowned. "What are you suggesting?" "I think my father is somewhere else entirely. And I think this whole school situation is designed to keep you busy while the real operation happens somewhere else." Before the inspector could respond, Kemi's emergency phone, the secret one, began ringing. She answered immediately. "Kemi, thank God." Her father's voice was breathless but strong. "Where are you? I've been trying to reach you for hours." "Dad, everyone thinks you've been kidnapped. There's a man at my school with a gun who showed me a video of you tied up." "That's impossible. I've been at the bank all morning, then at the lawyer's office setting up a trust fund for your education. I'm looking at the news on television right now. There's something happening at your school?" The pieces clicked together with horrible clarity. The fake kidnapping video. The convenient timing. The dramatic school siege that guaranteed maximum police attention and media coverage. "Inspector," Kemi said urgently, "it's a trap. While every police officer in Lagos is focused on this school, the real criminals are probably robbing banks, destroying evidence, or escaping the country. Inspector Aginola's eyes widened as she realized the implications. She grabbed her radio. "Control, I need immediate status reports from all major banks, the airport, and the evidence storage facility. We may have been deliberately diverted from the primary target." The response came within minutes, and it was devastating. "Inspector, the central evidence vault has been breached. Multiple files related to the Okafor corruption case have been stolen, including backup copies of financial documents and witness statements." "How is that possible?" Inspector Aginola demanded. "That facility has the highest security in Lagos. They used explosives to blow through the rear wall while most of our tactical units were responding to the school incident. Professional job, military precision." Kemi felt sick. While she'd been sitting safely in the principal's office, the real criminals had been systematically destroying the evidence that could put them in prison. Folake and Chief Bayo might still be in custody, but their associates were cleaning up loose ends with terrifying efficiency. "There's more," the voice on the radio continued. "Judge Adebola, who was scheduled to hear the Okafor case next week, was found dead in his home an hour ago. Apparent heart attack, but given the timing..." "Murder," Inspector Aginola finished grimly. "They're eliminating everyone connected to the case." Which meant Kemi and her father were next on the list. The realization hit everyone in the room simultaneously. The school siege wasn't just a diversion, it was also reconnaissance. While Mr. Adeyemi kept the police busy, his associates had been studying the response patterns, identifying key personnel, learning how to predict and manipulate law enforcement reactions. "We need to get you and your father to a safe location immediately," Inspector Aginola said. "These people are more organized and more dangerous than we initially realized." But even as she spoke, the lights in the principal's office flickered and went out. Emergency power kicked in, bathing everything in red light. Through the windows, they could see that the entire school had lost power. "That's not a power outage," one of the police technicians said, checking his equipment. "Someone's jamming all electronic communications in a 2-mile radius. We've lost contact with headquarters, with the tactical teams, with everyone." In the eerie red glow, Kemi heard a familiar sound that made her blood freeze. Her mother's lullaby, playing softly through the school's intercom system. The same lullaby Yemisi used to sing when Kemi was afraid of thunderstorms. But her mother was gone. Her spirit had moved on after the wedding incident. So who was singing her lullaby? And why did it sound like a warning? The answer came in the form of a new voice over the intercom, cold, professional, and terrifyingly calm. "Kemi Adebayo, you have 10 minutes to come to the school's main gate. Come alone, or we start killing your classmates one by one." Through the window, she could see armed figures moving through the school courtyard like ghosts in the darkness. The siege had been a diversion within a diversion. And now the real war was about to begin. This is getting intense. Do you think Kemi's mother's spirit is trying to warn her again, or is this something else entirely? Comment your theories below and smash that subscribe button. The final confrontation began not with violence, but with a child's lullaby echoing through empty school corridors. As Kemi made her way toward the main gate, against Inspector Aginola's desperate protests, she could hear her mother's voice singing the familiar melody, but the words were different now. "Brave little daughter, walking through the night, truth is your weapon, love is your light. Those who hurt others will face their shame. Justice remembers every name." At the school's entrance, 5 figures waited in the darkness. At their center stood a woman Kemi had never seen before, elegant, middle-aged, wearing expensive jewelry that caught the moonlight. She looked like someone's grandmother, not a criminal mastermind. "Hello, child," the woman said in cultured English with a slight British accent. "My name is Lady Adebimp Coker. I believe you've been causing considerable trouble for my business associates." "Who are you?" Kemi asked, though she kept walking forward with more confidence than she felt. "I am what you might call the senior partner in this organization. Chief Bayo and his daughter were merely middle management, useful for handling the day-to-day operations, but ultimately expendable." Lady Coker smiled coldly. "When they became careless and got themselves arrested, it became necessary to implement more permanent solutions." Behind her, Kemi could see armed men positioned throughout the school grounds. They had turned St. Monica's College into a fortress, and she was walking into its heart. "What do you want from me?" "Your silence, permanently. You see, the corruption network your family exposed was worth approximately $200 million in annual revenue. Banks, construction contracts, government ministries, international development funds, all of it flowing through carefully managed channels into legitimate businesses across West Africa." Lady Coker gestured to the school building behind Kemi. "Your little investigation has cost us everything. Folake and Bayo are talking to prosecutors, trying to reduce their sentences. Evidence vaults have been compromised. Government officials are scrambling to distance themselves from the scandal. Years of careful planning, destroyed by one teenage girl with a smartphone." "Good," Kemi said simply. "You killed my mother. You tried to kill my father. You stole money meant to build homes for poor people. I'm glad I destroyed everything." "Such righteousness." Lady Coker's smile turned predatory. "But righteousness doesn't stop bullets, child. Tonight, you and your father will die in a tragic school shooting. A disturbed former employee seeking revenge, perhaps. The news cycle will move on within a week, and we'll rebuild our operations elsewhere." But as Lady Coker spoke, something extraordinary began happening throughout the school grounds. Every electronic device, phones, radios, security cameras, even the armed men's tactical equipment, began activating simultaneously. Screens flickered to life, displaying the same message over and over: "Justice for Yemisi. Justice for all." "What's happening?" one of the gunmen asked nervously. "Technical malfunction," Lady Coker said dismissively, but her confidence was wavering. "Ignore it and complete the mission." Then the lullaby playing over the intercom shifted into Kemi's mother's speaking voice. Not the distant, ethereal tone from previous encounters, but strong and angry and very present. "Lady Adebimp Coker, born Adebimp Fashola in 1962. Widow of Chief Marcus Coker, whom you poisoned in 1998 to inherit his shipping empire. Mother of twins who died in a car accident you arranged to prevent them from exposing your crimes." Lady Coker's face went white. "That's impossible. Those records were sealed. Those witnesses are dead." "Death doesn't seal anything for those who die seeking justice," Yemisi's voice replied. "Every victim you've silenced, every family you've destroyed, every child you've orphaned, we remember. We know. And tonight we speak." Throughout the school grounds, the electronic displays began showing photographs, crime scenes, financial documents, death certificates, police reports. Decades of Lady Coker's criminal history appearing simultaneously on every screen in the facility. "The police can't hear us because of your jamming equipment," Yemisi's voice continued, "but every social media platform, every news outlet, every law enforcement database in Nigeria is receiving these files right now. Your crimes are being broadcast to the entire world." Lady Coker screamed orders to her men: "Destroy the equipment. Cut the power lines. Stop this immediately." But it was too late. The evidence wasn't coming from any equipment they could destroy. It was emanating from everywhere and nowhere, as if the very air around them had become a conduit for truth. Inspector Aginola's voice crackled through a police bullhorn from beyond the school gates. "Lady Coker, this is Lagos State Police. We've received your complete criminal history. The facility is surrounded. Surrender now and you will be taken alive." In the chaos that followed, gunfire, police tactical units breaching the school perimeter, criminals attempting to flee, Kemi found herself protected by an invisible barrier that deflected stray bullets and guided her safely toward the arriving police officers. As Lady Coker was dragged away in handcuffs, screaming about supernatural forces and impossible technology, she locked eyes with Kemi one final time. "This isn't over. There are others. Bigger networks, more powerful people. They'll never stop hunting you." But Yemisi Adebayo's spirit had one last message, delivered through every electronic device within a 5-mile radius. "Let them come. Truth is patient, but justice is eternal. Those who harm the innocent will face judgment, in this life or the next." As dawn broke over Lagos, Kemi stood in the school courtyard with her father, Inspector Aginola, and dozens of police officers, watching the last of the criminals being loaded into prison transport vehicles. The corruption network that had murdered her mother and terrorized her family was finally, truly finished. "It's over," Tund whispered, holding his daughter close. "Really over this time." Kemi looked up at the lightning sky and felt a presence she would never experience again, her mother's spirit, warm and proud and ready to rest. "It's over. Mama can finally be at peace." But even as she spoke those words, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Well done, young lady. You've impressed some very important people. We have a proposition that might interest you. Signed, the Organization for Justice." Some stories end. Others are just beginning. What did you think of this incredible journey of justice and supernatural revenge? Comment below with your thoughts on this family's triumph over corruption. If you love stories about good defeating evil against all odds, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for more amazing tale. Share this story with someone who believes in the power of truth and the strength of family bonds. And remember, justice may be delayed, but it's never denied. Thank you for watching.